They say they're looking for treatment, and therefore they're going to do the exercise, the the different things that those research programs are focused in trying to give treatment and help to the veterans. How do you respond there?
Like I say, I'm back to the Q fever, Epstein-Barr, mycoplasma, sandfly fever, leishmaniasis.
Testing that some vets got on the outside, various things. Have you been treated for those things? Antivirals?
Those stopped a long time ago. Cipro, doxycycline.
Did you have any response to?
The first medicine I had, Septra DS or something like that, stopped internal bleeding. This was in Saudi. When I came home to turn my medical records in, I was turned away.
So you really haven't been treated for those specific issues that tested positive?
The only thing I had to do some research on and got clearance to take was the doxycycline.
And did it help you? Because they pretty well have ruled that out as a problem.
It is a problem because after all the surgical medicine and all the stuff they did to me to try to, build the immune system back, when took a mycoplasma test, stuff was still active.
So you had to repeat testing?
But when I went
you mentioned that you concentrated on not letting them treat you as PTSD, of really trying to get answers on the physical testing and finding out what was wrong. So do you think that was a problem because that was an effort to compensate the veterans that were ill, and that was the only thing that we had available to get the veterans compensated, even in their early mid-90s, was to turn to PTSD rating?
Okay, this is a compromise. Okay, the veteran has to figure out how to get himself in the door so he can progress. If you say, okay, I don't agree with the PTSD rating, right? But all of a sudden, one day, all of a sudden, you having problems that you don't understand. Is it traumatic brain injury, or is it PTSD? If the doctor
as Dr. Haley refers to, it's traumatic brain injury without the stress.
Right. I actually had TBI without bomb blast.
Okay. What do you think about the efforts of the VA? They say they're going to outreach and, a 20-year point here from the Gulf War 20 years ago. That they're, going to rebuild trust and reach out and outreach and get the claims done. How do you rate them?
In my case, I went to close out my VA file. Add my last 5. I had 22 items. Count 22 items filed. Went to close them out. They were deferred and then dropped. Couldn't get nobody to VA system to even recognize I even filed a claim with 22 items. Then when I refile for tinnitus, heart damage, lung damage, and brain damage, somehow the VA lost 15 years of data.
So how do they, they admit problems were there, that it was broken, and they've got to rebuild the trust. Do you see
They didn't build no trust because I didn't even know they even lost my C file until they kept asking for the same data over and over.
But I guess what I'm saying is, have you seen any actual action since the VA's been using the right words of that we're going to correct this, we're going to reach out? Are you seeing any hardcore proof where you're at that there is a change here?
Depending on what case is filed and when it's filed, sometimes you don't even know what actions are being taken at the regional office. You really can't tell what goes on behind closed doors.
So it's not transparent at all.
But we do veterans, through our system, we've been doing veteran outreach. We've been trying to get the veterans to the people. But, you know, when you even broadcast that you have a veteran outreach, the veterans don't show up. Now, that's a disconnect between the VA and the veteran. The VA is actually sending people to file their claims or come in, you know, ask about your basic benefits. We actually do, we've been doing veteran outreach in this area over a full year now.
But what I'm saying is, you know, you've read what's been being said by the hearing last week, since the task force, and, you know, Mr. Gimrich's words, Mr. Shinseki's words, even the president's words. The words are nice. They're sounding better. But
okay,
what are you seeing?
Sound bites are great. But when we're doing veteran outreach, we're going out to help the veteran file a claim.
You're saying where? Who's the we?
Most of us are county service officers, service officers from the American Legion, you know, wherever, you know, whoever fills in from the VA.
Do you see the VA doing that?
Well, we have VA and TVC counselors on hand to actually file the paperwork. But the veterans, here's the disconnect. The veterans are not, you know, we're building a bridge between the VA, the service organizations, and our state organization.
But there's been 20 years, and some veterans
Them fell through the crack.
I mean, how do you regain their trust?
We're making an effort to try to go out statewide to meet the needs of these veterans. But if the veterans or then built a wall between us and them, because on one side I'm a them and on one side I'm a us. But I switched from angry veteran, angry teed off veteran, to veteran who sees a problem and needs. If I'm blessed to have benefits. I'm one of the few veterans that actually got my benefits, but I wanted that closure. So I had to, you know,
and it took you a long time.
17 years and my claim is not closed.
And you were at NCO level, with a lot of connections, higher rank, coming to your defense. And others haven't had that. And you've seen that.
And seen it. I even go through Oklahoma City on you know, when I'm just kind of done with my appointment, or right, you know, if I have a gap between appointments or I have a leeway if I get there early, I'll actually find the younger veterans, walk them around Oklahoma City, make sure they get in the same treat, you know, get them registered so they can, you know, have that, you know, that connect, not the disconnect, but the
connect. Are you seeing that happen?
Depending on some veterans don't even take the time to figure out what's in them in their own VA hospital, and it's there.
Well, do you think it's laziness on their part, or fatigue, or
we don't
neurocognitive? Are you getting any people reaching out from the family?
Well, when you see Vietnam veterans, the older veterans, Korean War veterans, World War II, Vietnam, and some of the, you know, younger veterans, families are there, you know, making sure their veteran is taken care of.
But some of them aren't.
Some of them are. Okay,
we've talked quite a while today, and I'm certainly glad I stopped, had coffee with you this morning. This is, as a staff writer, and I've got 4 veteran nurses that's been working this issue since early on, back in early 90s. I want to thank you, but I want to give you a chance because you're not going to be able to be at the NGWRC meeting in Dallas because you have VFW training down in Austin. But if you were there and had a chance to ask a question or reply to Chief of Staff Gimrich, what would that question or comment be?
My comment would be the same ones I done at the outreach with the VA and the University of Texas, look at the wars. Not just Desert Storm. Look before what happened in the 80s, because that started the timeline. Then when you hit all this stuff in the 1990 period, it just didn't drop on one area. It circulated. The desert, these desert winds move stuff around. And if you're not taking if you're not taking soil and testing, you can't.
Well, they took soil samples and went to Egypt, and Kilpatrick was involved there. Do we know what showed up in those sand samples?
Everybody should be asking questions. The people who have the connection should be asking the main question: what happened?
And treat that with truth and honesty.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you can rebuild trust.
You can't cower down from war.
You have to have the ground truth, in other words, to rebuild this trust, for them to be able to get the
honesty.
vets to come back to the VA.
If you're playing, I play several war game scenarios, Ace Combat. All of a sudden in my HUD, I have a ground target or air target. I know what I'm getting, what I didn't hit, and now I'm moving on to the next target. If you can do that in a video game, why can't you go back and re-piece a war together that was actual?
Do you think the medical researchers are actually getting the reports of what really happened in theater, so they have a better picture and knowledge to approach this problem for medical research and to find problems and how to treat it? Why not?
If you can go to the bookstore or library and buy a book on Desert Storm, and you can figure out what targets they hit, right? And some of the targets says bunker, chemical or biological.
Yeah, but what do you say to them that it has to be published in a peer-reviewed medical journal?
If you can find that same information in a book at a bookstore or library, why can't you transfer that same data to the medical side? The only thing you're doing is just transferring actual research data and putting it into a medical
Because
setting.
I don't think any medical researcher I've talked to has had a full briefing, truthfully, of what actually, in reality, we encountered.
If I'm writing an air tasking order, if I wrote an air tasking order during Desert Storm, sitting in that op cell, right? And if I had the luxury of writing that air tasking order and going on the op side and executing that air tasking order, don't you think I know what target was hit?
But do you think the researchers have that knowledge?
They don't ask. I'm starting to wonder if they even know what air tasking order is. They don't. I'm starting to wonder if they even know what the military terminology for war is.
Well, do you think they can adequately research a problem medically without some background knowledge of what really happens in that war?
No, you cannot have air samples, soil samples. Heck, the data's still probably blowing around in the sand over there now. Nobody has the guts to even say, well, I found this, that, and the other.
So you don't think there's been transparency between the active duty DOD and medical researchers and whatever research might have been done in the past history out at Fort Detrick on sarin or whatever that was never published, and you add that to the problem of...
you cannot do what we did in Desert Storm and then you go on to downgrade their weapon systems. If we unleash that stuff in the United States, somebody been hung or shot.